Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Experimental Cataclysm, the show where we talk about recent changes to the experimental version of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. Now, how's your week going, Internet? Mine's going pretty horrendous. Fun fact, on Thursday evening, I had spent the whole day working on this video, and then I accidentally deleted it when I was clearing out some files from my computer, and then I promptly installed Hitman 3, which overwrote all the files and made them not recoverable. So this is my second time recording this, and the video is going to be super late, so I know a lot of you don't care. Some of you care a lot when the videos are late, so there's my explanation. I think I've been doing this like 5 years. I don't think I've ever deleted a video by mistake, but that was really horrible. Although I did learn, now I know how to use the Windows recovery tool to recover deleted files, and I actually, to my surprise, it was able to recover like audio files from October, but the ones I really needed were unfortunately already overwritten. But anyway, that's how my week's going. Let's get started with the video though. Right up front here, let's talk a little bit about 0.H stable. So I did mention this in a previous video that we have seen our first hints at the next stable release, which came in the form of a blockers channel on Discord. However, since then there have been a few points that have been explained that this stable release is going to be a little different, so let's talk about that. Now, for as long as I can remember playing this game, the preparations for stable release came in the form of various freezes. Now, this meant that new content was not being added to the game because everyone turned their attention to polishing the upcoming stable. However, this time around, they are separating the game into two branches. One of them will be for stable release and one is for continuing the development of experimental. This means that experimental will continue getting updates throughout the stable release, with new content being merged as it usually is, and then the stable branch will only receive certain updates that they deem appropriate, as well as all the bug fixes and polish and development that we normally see for a stable. Now, there are benefits and negatives to doing it this way, and it's the first time that this has been done really in any way like this since I've started playing the game. For experimental players, this is good news because we're going to continue receiving updates, and it's good for me personally because it means this show won't be going on hiatus for like 6 months like it has historically. However, I do suspect this will mean that people who are working on the project are probably not going to focus all of their attention on stable. Normally, it's kind of an all hands on deck, and we hope that people will work on bug fixes and polish, but really people want to work on what they want to work on. And with experimental continuing to develop, that means a lot of people are going to take on their personal projects and not really work on the stable release. That would be my expectation. Now, because of that, I expect the stable will either become a longer process than usual because there will be fewer people working on it, or the stable might release with less polish than it normally does. And of course, those are just my thoughts. Really, I have no idea. Like I said, we've never done it this way before, but that's where we are currently. I figured I would keep you apprised of the situation. I've not been tracking the progress of the stable since they're doing it differently. I'm not even sure how to track the progress very easily, but yeah, I'll try to keep an eye on it. But anyway, with that, let's get into the normal show, which technically is not the first episode of 2024, but it is the first one where I'm reviewing changes that did get merged in 2024, so hooray, it's a new year, I guess. Alright, first up today from the Angelo guy, we've got the addition of new plushes. Now, if you weren't aware, plush toys have received quite a lot of variants, which I'll show you the HHG here with all of them listed. Now, the only reason I mention this is because we've received multiple PRs to add these variants, and not one of you monsters has added a unicorn plush. Now, we've got several dinosaurs that many of you have never even heard of, but no dang unicorns. And yeah, that's it. I don't know, my righteous fury about this is just something I thought I'd throw in here for fun. But anyway, moving on, next up today from Zygen, we've got the addition of diet soda. Beverages in the game and in real life do tend to be a source of many calories. Soda, cola, Coke, pop, whatever you want to call it, they have a lot of calories. And as far as I know, we've never had a diet version of these drinks in the game, despite the fact that a lot of them exist in real life and are pretty popular. I'm sure that statistically, most soda sold in the United States is probably not diet, just by virtue of there being like a million different brands and many of them not having diet variants. And of course, when you're making like a knockoff soda, you don't really care if it's healthy or good for you or whatever. You're just trying to replicate, like, oh, this is my version of Sprite or whatever. Anyway, in terms of the PR, we'll have to see how common they are and if their spawns make sense. But beyond that, I do think they should exist and be represented in the game. They've given these 5 new sodas a calorie count of 0, which does seem accurate to my personal experience with diet soda in real life. So you can now drink diet sodas in the game, so hooray. Next up today from Rennick CDDA, we've got a change that makes it so when you read a map in the game, the areas revealed by that map will be highlighted. Now, based on the PR, it looks like this information remains stored until you read another map, so depending on how often you find them, this could remain highlighted for a long time. However, there is also a toggle that was added to the map screen that lets you turn off the highlights at any time. I don't have much to say here. Most of the time, in my opinion, it's pretty obvious what was revealed by a map, but it seems like a feature people will get value out of, so why not have it exist? And again, if you have a problem with it or it annoys you or whatever, you can just disable it using that toggle on the map screen. Next up today from Zygen, we've got the addition of dog tags for soldiers. I actually was playing recently and noticed that we had pet tags, which list the pet's name, which is something I didn't know we had. And this is something similar. Dog tags for soldiers makes sense that we would have them. Really nothing to report here. I just thought this was an interesting flavor change, so I thought I would mention it. Moving on, next up today from Fairy Armadillo, we've got a change that I don't really know what to title it in the video timeline. It's labeled as Add Dwarfism and Gigantism traits and Vehicle Disability aids. Now this adds very tall and very short traits that you can take at character creation, which represent sort of the human bounds of actual human sizes. Unlike most characters, if you take these traits, you will actually start as a small or large creature where we're normally a medium-sized creature. And remember, with the vehicle storage changes that we talked about in the last episode, this would affect your ability to move through vehicle tiles. They also affect your stomach size and expected daily calories. Now the so-called vehicle disability aids are hand controls and pedal extenders. Now these came because there were also some changes to vehicle requirements, which now require you to have at least one functional leg to drive, and also because small characters will not be able to reach the pedals. Now as for obtaining them, I was a bit confused by the hand controls. The item is listed as just being metal tubes that clamp to a vehicle's gas or brake pedal. Now I've never seen these in real life. However, after a short bit of Googling, it pretty much popped up right away. They literally are just metal poles that you clamp to your pedals. That's really fascinating. I had no idea this low-tech kind of solution was out there. So I find that very fascinating. Probably you don't care. But anyway, they're craftable, or you can find them on some vehicles or like in a garage, things like that. And as for the pedal extenders, these are actually much easier because they're basically just blocks that you attach to the pedals for a shorter person to use them. These again are very easily craftable, so really nothing to worry about there. Now there was also a bug fix in this PR that I did see people posting about. Basically, previously with those storage changes, if your car door was broken, you wouldn't be able to move through it depending on your size and things like that. I saw that mentioned quite a few times on Discord, so no worries, that should now be resolved and we're just moving on here, I guess. Next up today from Cass Wedson, we've got an expansion of zombie miner loot. Now I mostly only mention this because we actually just encountered them in my Sky Island Let's Play, which you should check out because I'm desperate for your validation. Well, Cass Wedson here decided that their loot was pretty pathetic and decided to dress it up a bit. They now have custom hard hats and the miscellaneous pocket trash that we would expect to find on your average zombie, in addition to dropping a lot more tools, including pickaxes. Now finding a jackhammer or pickaxe, it's a lot easier these days than when I first started playing, but having a reliable place to find a pickaxe seems like a boon to me. Really, regardless, mines are, they're not super common, but they're not uncommon either, which makes the zombie miners something you can encounter in pretty much every playthrough. And getting these drops fixed up is one of those things that's easy to slip by unnoticed, but since we just saw them in the game, I figured I would mention it. Next up today from Angelo, we've got 3 PRs related to books. Now 2 of them are related to religious texts, and then there was one that had the mention of magazines as well, described as, quote, mainly for fluff purposes. Anyway, looking at the magazine PR, I didn't actually see any magazines. They were all spiritual books, and they all appear in the spiritual book JSON, so I really have no idea. Maybe that was left for a separate PR, or maybe I just missed them. However, since there are a ton of religious books, I don't really care about it one way or the other. In general, I think if we're going to have religious representation, then we might as well add like basically every holy book for equality reasons. Although in the United States, we have a hardcore leaning towards Christianity, so it would make sense for Bibles to be probably the most common religious book in the United States. That's not an endorsement from me for that religion, just for the record, just pointing out it's the dominant belief system in the US, including lots of people who want to force it on everyone else. Like literally, we have people trying to make it the state religion, so it's just the whole thing. In fact, I should just shut up because anything else I say would be extremely political, so we'll leave it at that. I'm just saying Bibles are probably hands down the most common religious text in the US, so it makes sense that there would be a lot of variants of them and they would be the most common. Alright, moving on, don't get political. Next up today from Fairy Armadillo, we've got tops for trees. Now the idea here is pretty simple. Trees in our game are very self-contained. Previously they occupied basically just one tile on the ground level. They never blocked rain or snow, they provided no shade, they couldn't be climbed, and etc. Well, this PR sought to fix some of those things. It adds treetops to the trees, it allows you to climb them, and it makes it so that the treetop is destroyed if the tree gets removed. Now, I don't think there's much to explain here. The concept seems very straightforward. There is some stuff about the terrain being unstable when you climb a tree, but if you're not moving, I don't think that even does anything to your character. Other than that, the only thing I wanted to mention is that people were talking about this on Discord and about how roofs don't actually appear in the game. It's a known bug that has existed for many years. Basically, anything that's kind of like a roof tile would not appear until you reload your game. So I saw people saying that treetops are like a really neat idea, but they don't actually appear unless you load your save. In my testing, I found this was true. If you teleport around, you will find the newly teleported area to contain treetops. However, if you just walk on foot, and like as you would if you were playing the game, the treetops don't appear unless you save and quit the game and then reload the save. Like I said, this is a long-standing bug. It's been in the game for many years, and it kind of renders this PR not like super helpful because of that. I'm not saying you shouldn't have made the PR, it's fine. I just think, someone needs to address this. It's been like that for several years now. Now anyway, my issues with climbing trees, it's sort of the same problem I have with climbing anything in this game. Falling down causes a large amount of damage across all body parts, and falling from a treetop is the same as falling one full story to the ground. Now you can climb trees by standing next to them and hitting the up Z level button like you would to climb a set of stairs, and once you're up there, you're perched on the top, and climbing down is the same as climbing down somewhere else. So as of now, I see this as a pretty limited benefit, but I have no objection to them being added to the game. The main reason I like this is the idea that they could provide shade and protection from like snow or rain. I think that would be good for in the woods players as well. And in the PR, they discuss some things they might do in the future, like having variable tree heights, so some of them you could climb even higher, or having more mutations and traits that can interact with them, things like that. But I think that's all my thoughts for now. So yeah, trees have tops now, sort of. If you load in the game again, they'll be there. It's cool. I just wish that bug I wish the bug didn't exist. Anyway, next up today from GK. Well, last time I'm pretty sure I butchered your name like horrendously, so I'm just gonna call you GK. Hopefully that doesn't bother you. Anyway, this PR here adds some infrastructure for medications and adds a few new medication painkillers. I won't pretend I understand everything that was changed here. There's some code stuff and all that, but it looks like the main thing was setting up new ways for medications to interact with the player. For example, drugs can now have a delayed effect. So instead of taking a pill and getting an instant impact, it would be delayed by 30 minutes to simulate that it's dissolving or taking effect or whatever. Effectively, anything that gets tagged as a drug could be set up to use this 30-minute delay, but in the future it could also be variable, so maybe some medications are faster acting than others. I remember when I had kidney stones, they gave me some pill, and I have no idea what it was, but the minute I took it, I immediately was stumbling back to the bed. As opposed to something like Tylenol Tylenol where I don't really notice the effects for 30 or 40 minutes after taking them. And I think it would be cool to simulate some of that stuff in this game, because why not? It adds an element to managing your pain and taking medications and things like that. Now, the other thing that I find very interesting about this is that it opens the door to let us have drug effects that interact with other drugs. If you've got that particular drug's like vitamin in air quotes in your system, we could have that interact with another drug in your system to give you different effects. Now, this could lower or increase a pill's effectiveness or cause a mix that threatens your health or kills you or whatever. And currently there's nothing like that, but those are the sort of things that this system enables, which I think is very cool. I would also love to see alcohol interactions with medications, for example, although I do think that would require us also to change how drinking and alcohol consumption works in the game. Now, as for the new medications, they are other NSAIDs like aspirin, which we already had. So we've got ibuprofen, naproxen, and acetaminophen. Now, these four medications are very slightly different in what they do in real life, but in-game they are currently all basically identical, because the only major effect of these pills is the painkiller effect, which in our game is basically one thing, right? And the other thing is that these are probably the most common medications in the entire United States. They're available over the counter, and in higher dosages, like you can get a higher dose through a prescription. So they're very common, so we would expect to see all four of these relatively commonly in the game. Now, there was also an effect added to aspirin that adds a small amount of time to your bleeding in order to reflect that it's a blood thinner. Now, at first, this bothered me because it seemed like a very gamey way of representing that it's a blood thinner, but I actually had blood taken just today. I still have the bandage on my arm. And when I was there, the lady asked me, "Have you taken aspirin recently?" I said no, but I do occasionally. And I asked her, "Hey, how much of an effect does that actually have?" And she said, basically, it will cause you to bleed longer than you would if you had not taken an aspirin. So aspirin in this game, adding a slight amount of time to you bleeding, seems to be exactly correct. So even though I initially thought it was a bit silly, that seems like perfectly correct. Or at least that's what my phlebotomist said, so there you go, that's something. Now, as I said, a lot of this is infrastructure that exists behind the scenes and enables future changes and implementations. There's not a lot here currently that's going to affect you as the player on the player side. I just think it's really interesting. Being able to make drugs interact in the future and having them be treated as drug vitamins, the delay from consumption to effect, and the ability for medication to interact with specific body parts, all of those are very interesting, and I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to see what changes here in the future. Anyway, next up today from Fairy Armadillo, we've got massive changes to bird mutants' wings and the ability for them to glide. Now, don't get too excited. I think the negative aspects of this massively outweigh any benefit from gliding. In my opinion, almost none of you would actually want bird wings, but let's talk about it. Anyway, we've had bird wings for a while, and previously they allowed you to sort of slow fall. Now, if you jumped off a ledge or whatever, you would be placed on the ground and your fall damage would be negated, suggesting that you had used your wings to descend safely. Also, some important context for this PR, bird wings were previously treated as growing out of your back and in no way interacted with the player's arms or hands. They were much more like angel wings than proper bird wings. Now, this PR, however, makes it so that the bird wing mutation actually does affect your arms and hands. This involves you losing your traditional hands and arms and having them replaced by those bird wings. Now, in my opinion, having wings like this should completely prevent you from, holding a rifle or a two-handed weapon, fighting in melee, really anything that you do, because you no longer have your hands. You know that I prefer realism over gamey nonsense, and if you've completely lost your hands and arms, you should be pretty useless in this game in the majority of your interactions. The trait here says that you retain a few fingers at the end of your wings, but that's really not the same as having a hand that can grasp a rifle and hold it correctly, things like that. Now, regardless, when you lose your hands and arms and you get these bird wings, the penalty to manipulating items and whatnot is reduced about 60 to 70% depending on the category. And you can see this if you highlight that wing's body part. Now, the most severely reduced things here appear to be staunching wounds and throwing, which are reduced like 85 to 90%. And I still feel that all of this is way way too generous, and honestly, staunching and throwing are probably the least important things you do with your hands in this game. I really don't like the idea of someone holding a gun when their arms have been fully replaced with wings, and they've lost their hands and only have a few fingers left. And they're probably enormous wings because they allow the player to glide, which should make it even more awkward to use these things that are designed for regular humans. Now anyway, as for the gliding that was added in this PR, like I said previously, wings allowed you to circumvent fall damage by effectively falling straight down when you jumped off a ledge. Well, now when you try to move off of a ledge, you will be presented with a new option called glide. Now gliding does have weight restrictions. You have to be carrying less than half of your weight. Now it seems like this was based on eagles being able to carry half of their body weight, but again, we are a janky ass human that just has evolved weird mutated wings. That feels like a very generous amount to me. It also requires your hands to be free and that your limbs not be broken, and if all of that criteria is met, then you can glide. Now gliding is a ratio of 5:1, so for each Z level that you descend, you will also move 5 tiles forward. Now wind can also give bonuses or penalties, and colliding with walls will cause you to fall straight down. And then just to pop in here as the editor, apparently this PR also reworked insect wings. I don't know why I completely missed this, but I'm way behind schedule, so I really can't touch on that. There'll be a link in the description if you want to read about insect wings. I didn't even know we had insect wings in the game, so apologies for that. Please check that out if you want to learn more about that. So yeah, anyway, there's a bunch of stuff that changed for bird mutants. Now I dislike a lot of it, and it feels very generous to me to bird-winged players who in my opinion should be rendered basically useless. Never mind the fact that you know how to glide and slow fall perfectly, even though you just mutated these weird wings and you have no ingrained knowledge of how to use them because you're not a real bird and you don't have thousands of years of ingrained evolution in your brain. But anyway, look, I know it was long-winded, my opinion was not favorable, but there you go, that's how I feel. Moving on. I just don't like the bird wing stuff, I don't know. Next up today from GK, we've got the introduction of Dormant Zombies. Now this is something we've talked about basically forever, the idea being basically like you have corpses that reanimate when the player gets close to them. This represents zombies going dormant or hibernating or whatever. You've seen this a million times in The Walking Dead or other zombie media. A seemingly dead body laying on the ground, unmoving until, oh no, the hero approaches and they lurch back to life, right? So in game, these are corpses that do not reanimate over time or through the effect of necro-type creatures that normally revive enemies. Instead, it's treated as a trap which will reanimate based on the player's proximity or the noise that you make. Or probably not noise you make, probably if a shrieker shrieked, it would also trigger this. It doesn't have to be noise that you specifically made. Now because it's treated as a trap, it is possible for your character to identify that the corpse is actually a dormant zombie even before you get close enough to it. I think this makes sense because of course there's a chance you would recognize like, oh hey, that's moving slightly, or that's not a regular corpse, it doesn't have any injuries, that sort of thing. And actually, now that I've been reviewing the PR, I think that's really all of it from the player side. There's really not much to talk about. There was a ton of stuff done to make this work, but all of that was like behind the scenes, like making sure they're not reviving naturally, making sure they don't make noise when the trap triggers, stuff like that. But from the player perspective, it's pretty straightforward really. It's effectively just a trap that will pop when you get close to it, which will spawn a zombie on that tile and despawn the corpse trap. Overall, I love this. These corpse traps can spawn out in the world, which can add, some more dynamic encounters since you'll be trying to avoid them while you loot or engage with other enemies and so on. And if you get too close or you make too much noise, then you have one more enemy to contend with. Now it's not really clear to me where all they spawn currently. The PR does mention mass grave locations, which is what I used to test this feature, so that at least that location has them. Oh, and also sometimes when I tested this, there were times when moving even adjacent to the trap would not trigger their revival, so it is possible there's like some kinks to work out there. I even got video of me stepping on the tile repeatedly and it didn't trigger it, but because again at the top of the show I mentioned I accidentally deleted the video previously, I no longer have that footage. I'm not sure if I'll be able to replicate it. Hopefully I can show you something on screen here. Now regardless, this is very cool. I'm happy to see this added. I think it's a cool feature. Alright, and then finally today we're going to do a little bit of like a free form segment here because frankly I forgot to do something. It's currently Sunday evening. As I record this, I would really like this video to go up on Monday, so we're going to rush through to try and push through this. But basically Guardian DLL recently added the ability to give your character a saline infusion, and the purpose of this is to fight hypovolemia. Hypovolemia, if you're not familiar, is a blood loss thing in the game that leads to a lower blood volume. It's not actually the same thing as replacing your blood with blood. Obviously it's just saline, but it does add to your blood volume. Now in the game we do track like red blood cells separately, I believe, so it's not going to help you with whatever the negative effects of that is, but it can help you with the effects of hypovolemia, which usually takes several days to restore your blood volume. Also makes you very thirsty and blah blah blah, etc. Now unfortunately I forgot about this PR until right now when I'm about to finish the episode, so I have not done the proper amount of research and such that I should have done, and I apologize for that. But as far as I know, it's pretty straightforward. You will find an IV bag of saline. You will go to, like, a hospital will have the IV bags. I believe you can craft saline, so maybe you could make one of these yourself. I'm not sure. And then you basically give yourself the IV infusion, which requires some amount of time. I believe it's set up to where it uses the new EOC system. So it's like once you start using it, it takes a period of time, and as you go, it gets progressively more valuable for your character. And then at the end, you've received the saline infusion, which should increase your blood volume and therefore help fight the effects of hypovolemia. I will link to the PR in the description down below. Specifically, I would like to apologize to Guardian DLL because I do think this is a cool thing that I wish I had more time to actually look at and test. But I wanted to point it out to people because it was just someone mentioned it on Discord and I completely forgot that this was a change I was supposed to talk about. So yeah, like I said, you know, I accidentally deleted the video. I've been under the gun here trying to get this thing done. I've basically been working on it for like 2 straight days, so we're just gonna leave it with that and we're gonna jump to the original ending of the video that I recorded. So I don't know, man, I love you, don't hate me. I don't know. And with that, actually, I think that's the end of this video. I do have a few updates if anyone cares. My Sky Island series should be continuing, although I've had no time to record recently. Hopefully there's not too much of a delay in those episodes, but yeah, I suspect there might be. I mentioned previously that my family member has a very bad cough currently, which makes it hard to make like the Let's Play style content. Like it's a lot harder to edit coughs out of that kind of video as opposed to this one where everything's scripted and I can just re-record a sentence if I have to. Beyond that, I'm still trying to edit my pile of garbage novel into a second draft. That's going really poorly. I'm pretty unhappy with all that. And then I had blood work today. I'm getting back on that whole like medical bandwagon trying to find out what's wrong with me, so gonna have a lot of appointments and stuff again. Not happy about that. It's a whole thing. But anyway, regardless, everyone, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be back in the near future with more content. If you keep watching it, I'll keep making it, I guess. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.